Hey all. So here is our June wrap-up. This is my June wrap-up, and it's Sir Chonk's, March through June wrap-up.
I don't read many books.
Well,
I'm not a strong reader.
It's that time of year. I didn't have a very good June. I'm not having a great July. I ended June in the ER and then the ICU, so that was great. So yeah. So it's been a rough couple. While. So we're going to alternate, and I'll go through what I read, and then I didn't read a lot that I loved either, which is part of I feel like if I like a lot, I read more, and if I start reading a lot I don't like, I read slower.
That's how pretty much everyone is, I think.
Yep. Yeah, so it's like I hit like a slump. But all right, so the first thing I read in June was What Lies in the Woods. I actually really liked this. This was a...
Squirrels lie in the woods. You can't trust them. They never tell the truth. They're nuts.
Anyway, so I read this. It's a mystery thriller, basically about a girl who is left for dead, essentially, and this killer is arrested for her for the attempted murder, and then he dies, and there's suddenly she goes back home, and she's discovering that maybe the version of events that her friends told might not be the same, might not be what actually happened. I just thought it did a really good job of being interesting, as a mystery, but also kind of dealing with toxic friendships and just the emotional trauma of things. I don't know, it was very well written. I really liked how it was put together. I thought it moved, felt like the pacing was good, the characterization was good. So I enjoyed this a lot, actually. All right, so Sir Chonk's first was months ago.
Oh, yeah. The Shards by Bret Easton Ellis. This was a book that I did not like. It's extremely long and cumbersome and self-gratifying, and the guy just basically the writer just wants to name drop all the people that he knows because he's a rich guy who lives in LA. And it's basically this fake story about a serial killer. Of course, they're all fake stories, but he sort of implies that it really happened, but it didn't really happen. It's hard to explain exactly. I know it's a book, so it didn't really happen. But, and yeah, it's just really cumbersome and dense and just pretentious and annoying. And there's some Bret Easton Ellis books I liked that I read in the past that I really, really liked. But this one was so bad that I don't know if I'm going to try any more of his after this. It may have been the last stop on my Bret Easton Ellis trek.
All right, so my next one was Tell Me I'm Worthless, which...
You're worthless.
Which I actually was really excited to read because everyone, it sounded like something I'd really like. And I didn't like it. But, there wasn't anything wrong with it. It just wasn't for me. When you read something and you're just I'm just not connecting to this book. And that was kind of how it was. The writing was fine, but it was the character was doing a lot of drugs and just kind of a mess. And it wasn't interesting to me. I feel I've passed that point in my life. Maybe if I'd read this when I was in my late 20s, I might have been more interested. But I've kind of passed the screwed up, drug-addled, club kid life. It's just not for me anymore. And I don't find it relatable. I don't care. So I just really struggled to really honestly care at all about anything that was going on in this book. So it's really short. And I mean, I think a lot of people like it. And it's like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not for me. All right, so Sir Chonk, you read Station 11?
Oh, yeah, Station 11. This was a thing that I thought was going to be pretty cool. It's people isolated in Antarctica and stuff, if I remember correctly, right?
I think it's just wherever.
I can't remember exactly what
I think it's after the apocalypse. I don't think it's in Antarctica. It's just anywhere.
I don't remember what the heck happened specifically with the setting. I remember the setting was cool. And people were isolated, and I thought it was going to be interesting. And it wasn't terrible, but the characters were kind of paper thin, and the plot was all right. It didn't really move that quick. Honestly, it didn't leave a very noticeable mark on my memory, even though I only read this 2 months ago. I remember thinking it was kind of meh. So meh.
Yeah, so kind of the same thing. Didn't hate it, didn't love it, just
Yeah.
not my thing.
Yeah, I feel like I really liked the idea and just didn't work that great as a book.
So then I read this play, She Kills Monsters, that Sir Chonk actually got me for Christmas. This was fine, and like there's a lot of like typos. There's definitely some like very dated stuff that I was actually kind of surprised this was only like written in like the last 10 years. Like, because I felt like, I mean, it was supposed to be set in the 90s, so, or like 80s, I think, 90s, I think. And, some of the language was just very dated and like weird. And I don't know if they were trying to go for that, but like just like kind of offensive stuff, like terms that we just wouldn't use. And so I was like, well, I don't think people would say that now. But like, I mean, my theater background, like, I think this would be really fun to see. And, like, as always happens in theater, you have kind of a little bit of creative license. And so you can, like, adjust things, to fit the cast and to fit, the time and where you are and stuff. So I think, as a play, like, I mean, reading it, there were, like, obviously glaring flaws, I thought. But I think it would, like, work really well, in a production. So it was short and it was fine, and plays don't take that long. So, I liked it. I mean, I didn't love it. I thought I would love it, but I liked it. It's about basically this girl whose sister dies, and her sister was, like, really into D&D. And so her other sister, who's not, basically, like, goes through this D&D campaign essentially to, like, reconnect with, like, her dead sister. So it's, like, kind of like D&D 90s kind of nostalgia, but also like about grief and stuff. So it was pretty good. But again, some glaring flaws. So if you're reading it and not in like that theater mindset, you might be like, this is weird. All right. And then you read Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry for School, right?
Oh yeah. This is pretty decent. It's essentially like this family who like is a land owning black family in like the South, which is like kind of a rarity. And the sort of white rich people sort of don't like that they're landowners, and they try to like screw them over as best they can. And their kids are like going to school and dealing with racism and stuff. It's just like, I wasn't there. I don't know. It feels like just an honest snapshot of like all of the sort of rampant racism in like the 1930s.
I thought it was during the Civil War.
No, it's way more recent than that. It's good. Like if you want to, and also it's like simply written.
It's a classic.
It's like a middle school sort of level book. So if like you want to read something of that sort, that's like a really light, easy read in terms of like density of the book. Obviously, it has some dark elements. Then it's pretty good. Some of the characters interesting. Solid all around.
All right, so then I read Mothered, which a lot of people really like, and I really disliked. And part of my problem is, like, I get really stuck on, like, writers who use, like, mental illness as, like, a plot device or to, like, kind of come up with some cool horror twists. And, like, I thought it was just really, really, like, awful portrayal of mental illness. And I don't like mental illness being, like, a gotcha kind of horror trope. People suffer from mental illness and it's like an actual thing. It's like, I mean, if you were like, hey, you know what's fun? Let's make like, I mean, they used to do things where they would be like, oh, this person's disabled and let's make them like a horror trope. But like, if you did that now, people would be like, that's kind of not cool. Like, oh, they're in a wheelchair. Let's like make them creepy. Like, that's just not okay. And it's like kind of the same thing. And like, I just feel like we're kind of not where we need to be in terms of that. So I just found the whole thing just really bothersome. I didn't like the writing. I didn't really like anything about it. And I know a lot of people really like it. So I don't know, maybe like I have a really hard time with horror. What I found is like a lot of popular horror I just don't like because it either uses tropes I don't like. It's like, I don't like the writing style. It's like gory, but for the sake of being gory. So I'm very, very difficult with horror. So like, I don't know, maybe it's me, maybe like horror. I love horror, but like, I'm just so particular that maybe it's just, my particular need. So I put some of these together because Sir Chunk's on like a Shakespeare kick. So here's his like collection of plays.
What the hell did I read? Antony and
Coriolanus.
Cleopatra.
No, you didn't have Coriolanus. You had Coriolanus, Cymbeline, and the Henrys.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm not going to break down all of these. They're Shakespeare. They're pretty famous. I would say that, like, Edward IV, Part 1, I had...
Henry.
Why did I say Edward?
Edward, yeah.
Henry.
Who's Edward?
I don't know.
Does he even have an Edward?
There's an Edward, but he doesn't have a play by him. Anyway, Henry IV, Part 1, I was about halfway through and I realized I had read it before. I finished it again anyway. That was okay. Henry IV, Part 2 has some really clever and fun, like, goofy dialogue. Like, Shakespeare loves to do that fun comedic dialogue, and that play, like, really had a lot of it, and it was really excellent. That was the highlight of that. It's also kind of a clever, like, trick move by Hank IV there near the end. It was kind of clever. Although, again, both the Henry IV plays, the main character is really Prince Harry, who's Henry V eventually. He's really the main characters, even though they're called Edward
Hal,
IV.
right? That's how they call him, Hal.
Right. And, yeah, that's what you got there.
Some Shakespeare.
That's what that was Shakespeare. I heard a lot of Shakespeare lately.
You're trying to, like, finish them all off, right?
Yeah.
All right, so then I read the Glenmere Girls, and this I had a similar issue with, like, Mothered, where, like, I wanted to like this, and parts of it I liked, but, like, I think I got hung up on things that I don't know if it was better written if I wouldn't have cared, but, like, I don't know if it was because, like, I didn't like the writing. I don't know. I'm confused because this isn't actually the book I thought it was, because I was like, I didn't like that, like, a guy wrote it, but this isn't actually the one by a guy. So honestly, I just realized I don't remember anything about this. So yeah, I guess I didn't like it because I don't remember anything about it. I mean, it was probably fine. I thought it was a different book. So yep. So this is where I'm at. I mean, by the end of June, like, I was just not feeling well. So obviously I do not know what was going on. But it didn't stand out. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it because it wasn't the book I thought it was. All right, so Sir Chonk, you actually liked something.
Oh, yeah. This is Stephen King's new short story collection.
Yeah, you did a whole video on this.
You like it darker. Yeah, there's a whole video, so I'm not going to say too much about it. I'll just say that in general, it's really solid. A couple that are not so great, but nothing that's complete garbage. And one that to me felt like a really sort of old school throwback to the 80s Stephen King, which was excellent. And of course the novellas, he's got like 3 novellas in here, I think. Those are all very solid. Definitely worth checking out.
All right, so then I read for Bookish Drummers doing the Bradbury Book Club. So the first one was Illustrated Man, which was exciting because that's the first Bradbury I ever read. So I reread The Illustrated Man, and it's awesome. And there were a couple that I didn't remember from the story. There were some that I was like, these aren't that good. But for the most part, I mean, some of my favorite short stories of all time are in this collection. The Veldt is in there, Kaleidoscope is in there, Rocket Man, and then I really loved Exiles, and there was another one I really loved, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head right now. But yeah, like, I mean, it's fantastic. It's just such a great short story collection. It's so amazing, too, because, like, the first story, The Veldt, is, like, so contemporary and relevant, and then you realize he wrote it almost 100 years ago, and it's, like, very creepy, because it's, like, how did Bradbury, like, how is he so prophetic? Like, I read Fahrenheit already this month, and so I'll go over that when I read that in my recap in July. But what's crazy about Bradbury is, like, if I believed in time travel, I would be convinced he had time traveled, because, like, the stuff that he, like, predicts, like, they didn't even have computers, and he's predicting things like smart homes. It's ridiculous. Like, and I mean, obviously his writing's amazing, his stories are really great, and then just in general, like, I don't know, everything about him is just great. So moving on to more Bradbury.
Oh, yeah. I read R is for Rocket, which is one of his sort of earlier-ish collections in the first, like,
I think it has the same story. It has the rocket in there.
Well, yeah, what's interesting is, like, this is got a lot of his most popular stories in it, and a lot of the ones she just listed from Illustrated Man are in this one. Like, Kaleidoscope is not, The Veldt is not, but Rocket Man is, Exiles is,
Rocket is, right?
Rocket is, Long Rain is in there. It's loaded with like a lot of his like most awesome, famous stories. Golden Apples of the Sun, I think, is in this one. Sound of Thunder is in here. It's like, so I already read like 2/3 or more of these previously, but I reread them all anyway because they're like the best. If you want to read like awesome Bradbury collection, this is like got a lot of his highlights in it. Awesome, great, read it. R is for read it.
All right, and then I actually didn't finish this because July came around and I was in the hospital, and then I got out of the hospital and my readathon had started. So I'm putting this on hold, and then after the readathon, or if I have time to get to like encore reading, I'll finish it, or I'll just finish it in August. But this is Slow Fire Burning, and so far it's pretty good. I like it, but I'm only like 20% in.
Would you say it's a slow burn?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. All right, and then the last one.
Well, didn't I technically finish this in July?
Yeah, but whatever.
But who cares? So I read Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King and Owen King. I didn't really like this too much. It had a lot of like really weird like structural flaws that are not common in Stephen King books, and like the characters were all like overwhelmingly boring for the most part. There were a couple that were all right. Also a problem he doesn't usually have. So like even in the King books I don't like, he usually has really solid, sound plot structure and usually at least a few interesting, well-developed characters. And that was lacking in this book, which struck me as kind of weird. And it's like really long. And like, it's only 700 pages, which like I guess is not really long for some Stephen King books. But it's just a plodding slog of like a million characters and they're not interesting. And of course the ending is awful. And even after like the climax is disappointing, as expected, there's like this 30-page wrap-up at the end of like what every single character does afterwards, and like these 2-paragraph sections. Like, what kind of nonsense? It's like at the end of Animal House, where like, and this guy did this and this guy did that, but it's like so long and it's so many characters. I don't care about any of them. Not a fan.
All right, so that was my June and Sir Chonk's like spring.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll come back in July, and hopefully July should be a lot better because I have my readathon, and Sir Chonk has to read House of Leaves and some other stuff.
I'll read some books maybe.
All right.
Boop.
Bye.
Boop.